are a number of things at stake this election year. One of them is the direction of the economy overall. And the first step to getting an economy back on track, and give you some idea of how bad this is, the present economy. If we had grown economically, we've been in recovery since 6 months into the Obama administration, technically, meaning it's been positive growth. It's the worst recovery since before 1960. There have been a number of recoveries. This is the worst. If we had grown as rapidly as we did during the Reagan recovery, when Reagan reduced tax rate, reined in spending as much as he could with the Democratic Congress, reduced regulations as much as he could with the courts and the trial lawyers, if we had grown as rapidly during the Obama recovery as we did during the Reagan recovery, there would be 14.7 million more Americans at work today. More than 14.7, almost 15 million, 14.7 million American families have a father who's not working, a mother who wants to work and can't, a son, a brother. Somebody in that family is not working. And there's a reason why there's so much pain and agony in the country today, because this recovery is not up to par. Had we not done Obamacare and the spending and the stimulus and the 20 tax increases in Obamacare, we could have grown at Reagan rates. So what we need to do is get back to the lessons we learned successfully under Ronald Reagan. Step one, do not raise taxes. If you stop tax increases, you force a conversation about spending restraint and government reform. Tax increases are what politicians do instead of reforming government, instead of making decisions, instead of prioritizing. Instead of saying, this didn't work, we're not doing it anymore, they say, well, you know, we'll just keep going, do everything we've been doing, and we'll raise taxes and do some more stuff that might work someday. The difference between the two presidential candidates on taxes. Donald Trump has said he wants a 15% business tax. That's corporate rates right now, 35%, the American corporate tax rate, 35%. The average tax rate in Europe is 25%. Our tax, stupider than France, is not where you want to be on tax policy. And yet our corporate rate, where we have to compete internationally, is 10% higher than the European average. And a number of countries like Ireland are significantly lower than the 25. What Donald Trump has put forward in his tax plan is a 15% business tax, not just for companies, but for self-employed people, people who have subchapter S corporations, pass-throughs, who pay their personal income tax as their business tax, a 15% rate for people who are self-employed and who work, as well as General Motors. That will turbocharge the economy and is extremely important. Trump's plan does another thing, gets rid of the death tax finally. Death tax was put in to pay for the Civil War. I went to public school, but recently was watching the History Channel and learned that that war has been over for some time. The death tax is still with us. The 3% federal excise tax on your phones that was put in to pay for the Spanish-American War is almost all gone. The liberals, the left, the statists have 100 reasons to put in taxes, and then they spend it however they want to. But there's always an emergency that tells you that they want to do that. So the Trump plan, 15% corporate rate, 4 rates. 0%, family earning less than $50,000 would pay 0%, and you actually get a postcard that you can send back to the government that says, I win. 10%, 15%, and 25% of the personal rates. No death tax, no AMT tax. It's a fine pro-growth plan. It's a particularly interesting plan when you compare it to Hillary Clinton's plans, plural. 3 major tax increases, business and individual, that total, by her admission, this one she admits to, $1 trillion over the next decade in higher taxes on top of the 20 taxes that Obama put in. And then Hillary wasn't even as clever as Obama and her husband. Bill Clinton, when he ran, said he'd never raise taxes on anybody who wasn't in the top 2%. That lasted until he went after people who drove cars and used gasoline. He raised prices on gasoline. Then Obama said he'd never raise taxes on anyone who earned less than $250,000 a year. That lasted 3 weeks into the administration when he passed taxes on middle-income people. And then 7 of the 20 taxes in Obamacare are direct hits on middle-income American families. So when a liberal tells you, I'm only going to raise taxes on the rich, they haven't finished the sentence. I'm going to raise taxes on the rich first, then you. And Hillary couldn't wait till the election to break her promise, which was she wasn't going to tax the middle class. She was going, it worked for Obama, it worked for my husband, I'll do it too. And then they had that tax increase on soda pop in Philadelphia and asked about it. Yes, that's a great idea, she said. And when Sanders said, what about a wage tax like they have in Europe on everybody who works from first dollar in? And she said, I would sign that also. She also came out for a 25% tax on guns, mixing her interest in disarming the American people, violating the Second Amendment, and raising taxes all in one big stupid bill, as opposed to dividing them up into different destructive pieces of legislation. So there is a very, very stark difference between the two parties, between the two candidates, on whether taxes are going down or up, and how dramatically. It'd be a dramatic, pro-growth set of tax cuts. And one of the reasons we know if President Trump gets elected as President Trump, he could pass that, is that his plan looks a great deal like the other 16 Republicans who are running, and the House plan and the Senate plan. There is unity on the center right on what pro-growth tax reform looks like, and it would be a very quick piece of legislation to pass and turn this economy around. Hillary would continue the problems we've had. There's another thing at stake in this election, and that's the sharing economy or the gig economy. You've heard of Uber and Airbnb, new ways where people are self-employed. There are 400,000 people who work for Uber. Sometimes it's full-time, about a third of them are full-time. Others are doing it on top of whatever else they're doing it between jobs. It's tremendous flexibility. Hillary has made it clear that she would make that illegal. 400,000 people at Uber and many others at Lyft and other companies. Airbnb, people letting somebody stay at their house, making some money to meet mortgages and so on, a way for families to support themselves. That would become illegal. Why? Because she wants to, in her words, crack down on independent contractors. The theme of this election is that Hillary Clinton wants you to have a boss. She does not like self-employed people. They cannot be made to pay union dues. They cannot be as easily taxed as employees, because then you get General Motors to tax all the employees and give you one big check for everybody. And then they collect the union dues and hand it to the labor unions. That Hillary understands. But a country where hundreds of thousands of people are off just doing things and taking care of their families and making a living and doing what they want to do when they want it. They don't punch in a clock and get paid on an hourly basis, or they do that one sort of job one time and another kind of job at another time. The flexibility that the new economy has given us, Hillary wants to take it back. She wants to take us back to the 1920s or 30s, back when the labor unions had control of workers and treated them like serfs, and everybody was an employee, and there was a boss, and everybody else was not. She has missed this transformation. One other thought on economics. It used to be that energy workers in the United States, people who dug into the ground and got oil and natural gas out of the ground, were spat on regularly by the liberals. I'm from Massachusetts. I heard them all day prior to emigrating to the United States. I lived in Massachusetts. And there was this contempt that the liberals poured out and still pour out for energy producers. Well, that made some sense when everybody in the business lived in Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, or Alaska, Republican states. They don't have electoral votes they're competing for, and so you had this shower of hatred towards those kind of workers. Fracking, making it easier to get into oil and gas that's in between levels of shale, is now where? Colorado, swing state. Ohio, swing state. Pennsylvania, swing state. Not so funny anymore, Mrs. Clinton, when she insults these people and tells them, as she said in a debate with Sanders, when he was saying he'd ban fracking, not quite sure how presidents do that, but he was pretty sure he could, because most of it's done on private or state land. They've done a lot of damage on federal land exploration, but state and local is flourishing in the country. She said, well, she hadn't promised to ban it, but I think when you see the regulations I'd put on, there are very few places that fracking would exist if she were president. Her words. So she has declared war on the interesting part of economic growth in 3 swing states. And lastly, let me leave with one thought. She wants a 25% tax on guns. She said this in Senate testimony. I would urge you to go to the website that Americans for Tax Reform, the group that I run, put up called hightaxhillary.com, because there isn't enough time for us to go through all the tax increase she suggested. She has 6 different capital gains taxes, and it's entirely too confusing for me to understand. And it's a tax increase, but she won't tell us how much because the numbers aren't quite clear. She wants to tax stock trading, so people won't trade stocks in New York. They'll do it in London. That's a smart move. And she wants an exit tax, which countries that people flee, they put up an exit tax. So she must have plans for how ugly it's going to get. That first thing you want to do is start putting up border guards to make sure people don't leave the country after she gets done with the other taxes. Hightaxhillary.com is a list of the taxes that she's put forward. If she's put the numbers on them, we have them there. She also called for a 25% tax on guns as a way to go after the Second Amendment. And I would suggest that Hillary's position on gun owners, families that want to take control of their own self-defense, are similar to her views towards people in the energy industry. She learned about this a long time ago, and she's older, okay? When she was a first lady, 1 million people had concealed carry permits. Today, 13 million Americans have active, shall-issue concealed carry permits. 13 million people. It was 3 or 4 million in the middle of the 20s. It's grown very rapidly. That is a voting bloc of people who've made a decision to take care of themselves and their families. They don't take kindly to the idea that Hillary says she wants fewer gun owners, that she wants to deliberately tax them and regulate them and harass them so that they are not able to make those decisions for themselves. And a couple of numbers, if you're counting, Florida, 1.5 million concealed carry permit, active concealed carry permits. 1.1 million in Pennsylvania. Think of the map. These are swing states. 450,000 in Ohio, 650,000 in Michigan, 300,000 in Wisconsin. Swing states. I believe that by going after the sharing economy, the new technology economy, she is on the wrong side of history, on the wrong side of the economy, on the wrong side of the future, and the wrong side of voters in swing states. By going after the Second Amendment, she makes the same decision, and by deciding to tax anything and everything that moves, she's reminded people that her interest is in funding the state, not taking care or working with the American people. Ladies and gentlemen, hightaxhillary.com. Check in every once in a while, see what the latest atrocity is, and vote. Thank you.